At dawn, beneath the centuries-old trees of Althorpe, something unthinkable happened. Under total secrecy, Princess Diana's grave was quietly reopened, not for maintenance, but for truth. What royal investigators uncovered inside shocked even the most seasoned operatives. Cassette tapes bearing her voice, a torn parchment warning her sons, and a sealed pouch that could rewrite history. Now, with the monarchy scrambling and the world watching, her final words are speaking louder than ever. Buried once by fate, and again by silence, Diana is rising, and this time, the crown can't stop her. Secret orders issued. It was just after 5 a.m., beneath a veil of fog and silence, when Althorpe Estate was sealed off under royal protocol. Armed guards and a convoy of unmarked vehicles moved discreetly across the grounds. The grave of Princess Diana, untouched since 1997, was being reopened. Officially, the operation was labeled structural maintenance, a routine preservation task cited by the Royal Archives Division. But the presence of forensic examiners, not stonemasons, told another story, one whispered only in trusted corners of Buckingham Palace. The orders came not from Parliament nor Scotland Yard, but directly from King Charles III. According to two senior palace aides, he authorized the reopening after being shown a rediscovered document stored in Kensington Palace's restricted archive. Only a few were informed, including Charles Spencer, Diana's brother. When notified, he reportedly stood silent for a full minute before saying, "She warned us this day would come." His voice, insiders say, cracked on the word warned. Security for the operation mirrored royal funeral standards. A perimeter was established around the oval lake where Diana rests, cameras were blacked out, and electronic jammers disrupted all drone surveillance within a 1-kilometer radius. Royal Protection Services coordinated with M15 to ensure total secrecy. Ground crews, vetted for loyalty, were instructed to work in total silence. Several were reportedly hand-picked from prior Operation Paget teams. The procedure lasted just under 4 hours. What was removed from the grave was not structural material. It was a sealed pouch embedded beneath the coffin lining. Alongside it, a fragmented page believed to be part of a torn journal. Both items were immediately secured in a black diplomatic case, hand-delivered to Windsor Castle's Royal Evidence Chamber. By 10:15 a.m., the grave was restored, flowers replaced, and silence resumed. But the monarchy would never sound the same again. As sunrise bathed the estate grounds in gold, whispers of what had transpired began circulating behind the palace gates. But the true reason for this unprecedented act lay not in the ground, but in a letter, sealed, hidden, and almost lost to time. A forgotten royal letter surfaces. The spark that ignited the excavation was found not in a basement or vault, but in a forgotten folder during Kensington Palace's routine digitalization effort in early October. A sealed envelope faded at the corners and marked in Diana's distinctive hand, to be opened only upon truth's demand. Tucked behind outdated financial logs, the letter was labeled August 10, 1997, just 21 days before her death in Paris. The document was opened under supervision from both royal archivists and palace legal counsel. What they found sent shockwaves through the system. Diana had written in stark, trembling words about being erased too early, and a fear that something planned was moving beyond her control. Though never naming names, the tone suggested paranoia backed by detail. She referenced external forces, planned surveillance, and an upcoming meeting she feared would never happen. The letter was flagged immediately for security review. For days, internal advisors debated whether to escalate the contents. But when one aide connected a fragment of the letter to Diana's voice tapes from the 1990s, a senior investigator reportedly said, "We have no choice but to reopen everything." It was the combination of the message's timing, tone, and sealed instruction that made it impossible to ignore. Historians familiar with Diana's final months urged careful review. One pointed out the peculiar phrase, "If they can't silence me, they'll rewrite me." To some, that line reflected years of attempts to control Diana's posthumous image, efforts now unraveling. The decision to reopen the grave was not taken lightly, but to deny the request, one aide said, would be to deny the truth she left behind. The letter's contents, once verified, were sealed in a secure archive at Windsor, and a full review was presented to Charles and Princess Anne. From that moment, the investigation entered a phase not seen since Operation Paget. But this time, the monarchy was the one under scrutiny. The letter cracked the door. But the task ahead required precision, loyalty, and cold discipline. It wasn't enough to read Diana's final words. Now, the crown needed eyes on her final weeks, and a team who could follow trails buried for decades. Royal investigators assigned. By October 18th, a specialized unit had been quietly formed within Scotland Yard, resurrecting fragments of the old Operation Paget structure. But this team wasn't simply revisiting old files. They were empowered with digital forensics, AI-enhanced reconstruction tools, and clearance that reached even MI5 archives. Among the recruits were 2 former intelligence analysts, a cybersecurity expert from the private sector, and a forensic pathologist with clearance from the Royal Medical Office. The team's mission went far beyond re-examining the Paris crash. They were tasked with tracing Diana's movements during her final 6 weeks, identifying who she met, what she knew, and more importantly, what she feared. Their files included newly unlocked communications between Diana and international media outlets, as well as unreleased voice dictations from August 1997. One internal briefing note, now circulating among top-level aides, included the phrase, "Items of interest potentially buried or stored with the deceased." It raised questions many had dismissed for years. Had Diana left behind something meant to be found later? If so, why hadn't it been discovered sooner? And who, if anyone, had worked to keep it hidden? Charles gave the green light, but reportedly insisted the investigation remain strictly confidential until legally unavoidable. Aides say his voice trembled when he was told the scope of the new unit's authority. Camilla, briefed days later, allegedly called it a dangerous distraction. But the truth was already unearthing itself. The shocking discovery inside Diana's coffin. As the light faded over Althorpe Park, the forensics team reached the final and most controversial stage of the operation, carefully inspecting Princess Diana's burial chamber. The coffin, secured beneath layers of reinforced stone and polished oak, had remained sealed since the funeral in September 1997. Yet the investigators were not looking for remains. They were instructed to search for foreign inclusions. What they found stunned everyone present. Tucked beneath the coffin lining, hidden just behind a layer of velvet padding, was a sealed black pouch, no larger than a diary. It bore no markings, no initials, just a clasp, worn smooth with time. Accompanying it was a single sheet of aged parchment, ripped at the edges and folded twice. The paper's condition suggested it had been handled in haste, perhaps torn from a larger book or journal. When opened under controlled light, the fragment revealed a sentence written in Diana's unmistakable script. They knew. Tell my boys just 5 words, enough to change everything. Inside the pouch were 3 compact cassette tapes, dated and labeled in small capital letters. One bore the initials HW, another marked US Press, and the last simply for W and H, presumably William and Harry. Each tape had a foil security seal still intact. The decision was made immediately. These were not relics, they were evidence. The items were placed into a temperature-controlled forensic case and immediately airlifted by Royal Protection Services to a classified holding unit near Windsor Castle. That same night, King Charles, Prince William, and security leadership were briefed in person. Charles reportedly sat in silence as the words "audio confession" were spoken aloud for the first time. One aide described the tension in the room as historic, like the moment the walls finally cracked. The pouch had been protected not by luck, but by intent. Diana had left behind more than grief. She left clues. And once her voice returned, the silence surrounding her death would no longer hold. Diana's final voice reveals hidden truths. The tapes were immediately transferred to a royal forensic lab under the strictest conditions. High-resolution digitization began that evening, with voice print authentication run against known recordings from Diana's 1995 BBC Panorama interview and personal dictations archived during her charity years. The results? A 99.87% match to Diana's voice. These were no fabrications. Each cassette held between 12 and 25 minutes of spoken entries. The content, according to 2 individuals present during the first playback, was haunting beyond belief. Diana spoke in a calm but clearly anxious tone. She detailed concerns about being followed by the same gray sedan, of her private phone calls being interrupted, and a growing feeling that her every move was being anticipated by someone inside. One of the most explosive revelations was her suspicion that members of the royal household, not just distant courtiers, but named senior figures, were briefing the press to frame her instability. Diana referenced a planned interview with a U.S. outlet, possibly CBS or 60 Minutes, which she hoped would allow her to tell the full story before she lost public access. Even more chilling were her final recordings, clearly marked as intended for her sons. In one, she says, "If I'm gone before you're ready, know this, it wasn't an accident. I was inconvenient. They needed silence, and I was too loud." She ended the tape with a mother's plea. "Please don't let them bury me twice." Legal teams immediately sealed the tapes, logging them under the Royal Emergency Archive Protocol. A written transcript was prepared for Prince William, who requested to hear the original audio before any public discussion. The tapes were not handed to King Charles initially, for William's decision to handle the material as a son, not a sovereign. Diana's voice had always captivated the world, but now it haunted her legacy. And as the firstborn son sat alone with her final confessions, the royal family braced for the next tremor, because he was no longer a boy grieving. He was a man listening. William and Harry. Notified. The weight of the tapes fell first on Prince William, who had been briefed by his personal security advisor the morning after the discovery. Sources close to him described his response as visibly shattered yet eerily composed. He reportedly said, "She left them for us." She knew this moment would come. With Catherine by his side, he insisted on hearing the original tapes in a secured Windsor vault before allowing legal teams to redact or classify any material. Over the course of 2 hours, William sat alone with his mother's voice echoing in a locked room, years collapsing into minutes. Witnesses say he emerged pale, tear-streaked, but determined. "We don't bury this," he reportedly told aides. "We protect it, and we act on it." Meanwhile, in California, Prince Harry was briefed through a top-level security relay coordinated by the Foreign Office. Despite tensions between the brothers, William ensured that Harry was given equal access to both the transcripts and a high-security playback device. Harry's response came swiftly. "I always knew. We both did. But now, they will have to face it." This moment marked the first genuine communication between the brothers in over 6 months. Royal aides described the interaction as short, emotional, but binding. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was alignment. Diana's words had reached them both. And now, the palace, already fractured by scandals, exile, and fading public trust, was facing its greatest reckoning since 1997. William called for a closed family summit. Harry agreed in principle. Catherine prepared the secure suite at Windsor, where they could meet without press or political interference. The reunion, if it happens, will be more than symbolic. It will be seismic. Diana, once silenced, was now their united cause. The palace reaction. When the first internal report on the recovered tapes reached Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere shifted from controlled curiosity to pure crisis. Senior aides, accustomed to managing scandal, quickly realized this was no ordinary storm. This was history resurfacing with a voice. The official statement, drafted by the Royal Communications Office, spoke only of routine preservation and archival work at Althorp, deliberately omitting any mention of the cassette tapes or the note reading, "They knew." Tell my boys. But behind those ornate gates, denial turned to panic. King Charles III, briefed personally by both legal and security teams, reportedly turned ashen as Diana's words were summarized aloud. According to one eyewitness, he whispered, "She's still speaking, even from the grave." Sources claim Charles demanded immediate containment, ordering a freeze on staff communications, private email audits, and NDAS for all individuals remotely involved with the operation. "No word leaves this palace," he said. Yet by that point, word had already leaked. Courtiers were divided. Some argued for transparency, urging Charles to face the public with controlled disclosure, a strategy of ownership before scandal. Others insisted secrecy was the only path to preserve the monarchy's dignity. Camilla, whose name allegedly appeared in one of the recordings, was said to be visibly shaken, but furious at the same time. One aide quoted her shouting, "They're turning ghosts into ammunition." Her camp began informal outreach to media allies, preemptively framing the story as a hoax or forgery. Still, the damage was irreparable. Late that evening, senior advisors from Downing Street and the Metropolitan Police convened with the palace to discuss potential security and historical implications. What was said in that meeting remains classified, but multiple insiders confirm one chilling line delivered by a government official. "If the people hear her voice, they'll never see this family the same again." And so, the silence returned. But it was trembling. For every order to suppress the story, 1,000 whispers grew louder. And outside those gates, the world was already awakening to the impossible. Diana was back. Global outcry and renewed demands. Within 48 hours of the first leak, the global media landscape erupted. Every major outlet, from BBC to CNN Le Monde and The Guardian, carried the headline, "Diana's grave reopened under secret royal orders." Crowds began gathering outside Kensington Palace and Althorp Estate, laying fresh white lilies beside notes reading, "She warned us," and "Justice for Diana." The images resembled those from September 1997, when seas of flowers drowned palace gates. Across social media, hashtags like #Diana's voice, #the tapes, and #let her speak dominated trends for days. One viral post read, "She tried to tell us. They tried to bury her twice." The emotional outpouring was global, but the anger was local. Citizens demanded explanations from Parliament, and MPs from multiple parties called for an independent commission to verify the tapes and review Operation Paget's findings. Even international leaders weighed in. A senior U.S. Senate member commented anonymously, "If she had evidence prepared for the press, the world deserves to hear it." The generational divide was striking. Those who lived through Diana's era spoke of closure, grief, and vindication. Younger Britons, however, saw the story through another lens, a woman fighting an institution that crushed her spirit. They viewed Diana not just as a royal, but as a reformer, silenced for defying power. University rallies across London, Manchester, and Edinburgh featured students holding signs reading, "She wasn't paranoid, she was prophetic." Meanwhile, palace allies scrambled to stem the tide. Controlled leaks attempted to reframe the discovery as routine forensic review, but by now, the public didn't believe such phrasing. The myth of control was shattered. The press, once complicit in Diana's suffering, was now her greatest amplifier. Newspapers began running side-by-side analyses comparing her taped words to her 1995 BBC interview, where she'd said, "There were 3 of us in this marriage." Now, a new headline echoed everywhere. There were more in the plot than in the marriage. The monarchy's image, already fragile after years of internal tension, began to crack in public perception. For the first time since Diana's funeral, sympathy overwhelmingly leaned toward her sons and her truth. But as the world rallied around Diana's memory, those sworn to document the truth prepared to act. Historians, biographers, and investigators began piecing together a narrative the palace had spent decades denying. Historical experts and biographers weigh in. Renowned royal historian Dr. Celia Morland, reviewing verified transcripts, declared, "These tapes rewrite the post-war history of Britain's most famous family." Independent handwriting analysts confirmed Diana's script matched letters stored from 1995 to 1997, while voice pattern experts authenticated the recordings against the BBC Panorama database. There was no doubt it was her. Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler, issued a tearful statement on live television. "She told me she feared they would try to silence her. I kept her secrets as long as I could." Now she's speaking for herself. Even Andrew Morton, author of Diana, Her True Story, publicly admitted, "This is the missing chapter, the one we never got to print." The discovery also reignited old suspicions about MV6, media manipulation, and coordinated misinformation in the 1990s. Declassified documents revealed how surveillance was routine for high-profile royal figures. What once seemed conspiracy was now evidence, and those who once dismissed Diana's fears as hysteria began issuing apologies. Experts warned the monarchy faced an existential crossroad. If the palace continued suppression, it would only strengthen calls for transparency. But if they released the full recordings, they risked validating decades of speculation about internal betrayal. "The crown has trapped itself," one historian wrote. "Silence will damn them. Speech might destroy them." And as experts dissected evidence and headlines swelled with fury, one decision lingered above them all, the one that could end the silence or forever fracture the House of Windsor. Truth rising from the grave. By the end of November, the monarchy faced the reckoning it had long evaded. The items recovered from Princess Diana's coffin, the tapes, the torn parchment, and her letter marked Truth's Demand, were now stored under armed guard at a classified royal archive. Yet the story would not rest. A special parliamentary committee, backed by cross-party MPs and independent counsel, convened to determine if the investigation should reopen in full. The motion passed in principle, a historic first in British constitutional history involving a reigning monarch's past actions. The palace could no longer bury the story under heritage preservation. It had become a matter of public conscience. Prince William, after weeks of reflection, reportedly began preparing a public statement. Sources say he plans to acknowledge the findings, honor his mother's courage, and call for truth regardless of consequence. Even Prince Harry, despite distance and resentment, has privately expressed willingness to stand beside his brother if the moment requires it. "She's brought us back together," one aide quoted him saying, "not through guilt, through love." For King Charles, the crisis is existential. His reign, already strained by declining support, now teeters on the edge of historical reappraisal. Camilla's image, once rehabilitated, has crumbled anew under association. Insiders confirm she's withdrawn from public life temporarily, citing emotional exhaustion. Meanwhile, the world waits. In memorial parks, people light candles. In classrooms, young students debate Diana's courage. And across generations, one realization unites them. The truth she feared would die has survived. Princess Diana once said, "I don't go by a rule book. I lead from the heart, not the head." Now, nearly 3 decades later, it is her heart, her words, her warnings, her voice that lead Britain into a new era of reckoning. She was silenced once. They buried her twice, but history, relentless and merciful, has finally given her back her voice. For decades, the image of Princess Diana rested in a frame of tragedy, dimmed by candlelight, sealed in grief. The public mourned her, the monarchy moved on, and a narrative was set in stone. Accident, heartbreak, farewell. But now, from beneath that very stone, truth has stirred, and with it, a reckoning long denied. The discovery of tapes inside Diana's coffin didn't just unearth forgotten recordings. It unlocked a vault of memory, one the royal institution worked tirelessly to seal shut. Her voice, trembling but resolute, painted a picture of fear, surveillance, and betrayal in her final days. Not paranoia, as once dismissed, not melodrama, but documentation, warning. A mother trying to protect her sons from forces she feared would silence her forever. The tapes named names. The parchment whispered secrets. The letter, sealed in a Kensington vault for 25 years, carried the chilling phrase, "to be opened only upon truth's demand." That demand has finally come, and it echoes louder than any coronation bell. Prince William, the future king, has faced what no heir should: the return of his mother's suffering, made real again through sound and ink. He is no longer just Diana's son. He is now her witness, her voice, and perhaps her vindication. Prince Harry, half a world away, was drawn back not by royal protocol, but by the shared gravity of legacy and loss. For the first time in years, the brothers are not divided by titles or tabloids. They are united by memory. Within the palace walls, the atmosphere is no longer regal. It is radioactive. Camilla's circle has retreated. King Charles, once defended by silence, now finds his past colliding with his crown. Advisors whisper of abdication. Courtiers speak of damage control. But the truth no longer lives in palace corridors. It lives in the hearts of a public who remember why they loved Diana in the first place. Around the world, something unprecedented is happening. Not just a re-evaluation of a princess, but of an entire system that failed her. Students study her. Scholars quote her. Protesters raise her image. And everywhere, a single question grows louder. What else have they buried? This moment is not just about what was found in a coffin. It's about what was found in the soul of a country. A voice it tried to silence. A woman it tried to contain. A truth it could no longer ignore. History has turned. The crown must answer. And Diana has spoken.